Oh man, thanks so much for hopping on. I really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Yeah, I watched the film yesterday and congratulations, you've broken
Ah,
Hollywood.
thanks.
You've
Ah,
broken
thank you, man.
because you took two of the biggest stars in the world, the suave hero from Kingsman, the action hero from Mad Max, and you put them through a blender. And when you were writing this, did you actually picture Charlize and Taron or any Hollywood stars to see how far you could
Absolutely
push
not,
them?
man. Definitely not. No, there was no world in which I ever thought that this version of the movie was possible. It's just not a thing that as a writer, you certainly for me as a writer, I could never allow myself to think that this was how it was going to go. It's just not, it was not on the radar for 4+ years of working on the story. There were many other versions that almost came together and didn't, and directors are interested and production companies interested, but at no point did it seem like this was going to be how it was going to come together. No, it was mind blowing in the most humbling and like gratifying way that you could possibly imagine. Yeah, no, it was like actually unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, you left me traumatized after watching it yesterday.
Ah,
You
that's the
did good
best
job.
review possible. I love it.
And speaking of unbelievable, the first 9 minute opening, I loved it. Uh, in the mountains, it starts with Sasha making a reckless choice and essentially gets her partner killed. Why was it important for you to start her journey with a tragedy that's basically her fault?
I so it's funny. Not it's not funny. I pitched the opening of that movie to my wife a year before I started writing it, and I just had this image of these two people. You think they're in a camping tent, and you open this flap, and they're actually 500 feet in the air. And I just kind of loved the idea that you could introduce a character who makes a terrible mistake, and there's this incredibly traumatic event on the mountain, and then has to return to the mountain in order to kind of find salvation. I was really excited about what the mountain could represent for people. I love the psychology of rock climbers and these sort of daredevil kind of extreme sport athletes. They kind of exist in this other time. Like I love sports, but there's nothing that comes close to that in any of the major sports. So I was really interested in the psychology of people who push themselves to that place. And from there, it was about finding the right kind of genre story that could start with this kind of high altitude accident, and that the only way to solve that was to go back to the high altitudes and figure out how to turn that kind of tragedy into triumph. That to me was where the story started, and then it was about figuring out how to get from that opening to what I knew was the end of climbing a mountain with nothing, barefoot with no ropes. How do I get from A to Z? That was the fun of kind of figuring out the rest of the story.
Yeah, that decision making from Sasha. Sometimes for us as audience members, we're screaming for her not to do it again. But we see it again 5 months later. She's in the Australian outback. And then when Ben is first introduced and he says, "Oh, you could either go my way or you could go this way, the 9 kilometer route or the 50 kilometer route." It's it it just surprised me how she still chooses the risks, even after what happened on the mountain. And when her partner says, "Oh, you're rushing too much," is that the moment Ben realized that he found his perfect prey?
I mean, you're nailing it. For me, that's the moment where he's at least like she might be worthy of it, right? Like he sees that she's pushing it to a place that is dangerous, and to him that's attractive. And we were always trying to find the moment. If you think about like how does a serial killer kind of select their victims, there's certain check marks that each one probably has to find, and it was about finding the ones for Ben that felt true to his character. And to me, that was always one where her decision to take the best way or the hardest way piques his interest in a way that seems innocuous at the time, but when you look back, you're like, oh, she was walking right into his trap.
It's like he's got a fetish for people with thrill seeking.
Absolutely, that's how I always saw it. That there was an element of Ben's selection of his victims, that the more capable they were, the more interested in danger they were, the more they were pushing the limit, the more excited he got as the person that he is.
More about how with Ben, when I was thinking more about his character earlier today, when we're in the store and we're introduced with him, when he brings Jenna's jerky, I was like, first I thought, oh, fair enough, it's quite sweet. He named it after his mom. But then when I was thinking about it today, he's he's so proud of it. And Sasha actually enjoys eating it. But then we realize that it's literally made out of people, made out of a
I
mom.
know.
So would you say that that's Ben's way of showing that he's already consumed her into his world before the hunt even started?
I think it's such a good question. I mean, I think the answer is yes. I think that he's someone who, um, like a hunter, he's using all the parts of his kill. And I think that for him, there is, in his mind, he's not the villain, right? He's the hero of his own story. He doesn't think of himself the way that we do, or certainly the way that Sasha does. He's seeing himself as doing this righteous and pure thing. And for him, that part of that is, you know, consuming his victims and kind of turning them into sustenance. I think for him, I love that kind of moment where he comes in and you think he's just this kind of bumbling salesman just hawking his wares. And what you realize is, no, he's also covering up evidence. He's also disposing of bodies in this way that seemed innocuous and is actually incredibly diabolical and really demented. And also, like, there's a part of Sasha that kind of is drawn to that. I think that that's what was so interesting about the kind of the relationship between Sasha and Ben, is that Ben is where Sasha's going to end up if she's not careful.
Mm.
And if you deal with that opening tragedy in the wrong way and you don't learn the lesson and you continue to push the limit further and further, you're going to need a bigger hit every time, that eventually you end up like Ben if you're not careful. And so I think the fun of it, the fun of the movie is figuring out where's that line for Sasha where she's confronting that darkness and then figuring out, how do I pull back? How do I take a detour so that I don't end up in this place? Because if she continues to go down that path, Ben is the answer. Ben is where she's going to end up. And that ultimately isn't what she wants. And I kind of think that that's what I love about her journey, is that she has to go to that really dark place. She has to kind of become an animal, and she rips his ear off. And like, she goes to that those depths and then has to, like, literally, figuratively, spiritually, philosophically climb her way out of that. Was always part of what I thought the mountain as a metaphor could provide.
Yeah, the way that there's so much detail within it of how you portray that, and the thing that mirrored Sasha's like thrill nature was essentially how easy she was manipulated by Ben's charming gentleman nature. And we obviously know Taron Egerton. He's got the charm, the swagger, the suave from Kingsman. But then he reveals those razor sharp teeth. How did you come up with that physical detail to signal he's no longer human? Was there a
You
version
know,
where he didn't have those teeth?
there definitely was a version that really came about when Taron joined the project. There was a version of Ben that was a little bit more stoic and a little bit more reserved and a little bit more controlled, which is actually the energy that Sasha is bringing. And so when Taron came aboard, he wanted to kind of bring a contrasting energy. And so when he saw Ben almost as this stunted child. There's almost this, like, boyhood kind of manic teenager high wire energy. He's swinging from a trapeze. He's almost treating it like an after school vacation, but he's also this feral wild animal. And so you kind of have that energy, and so that's where really um that's where the teeth, for example, came from. Was how do we kind of surprise the audience with what you think he is, and that plays into the characters Taron has played before. You know, Elton John and
Mm.
Eggsy, and then carry on where he's leading man, suave, James Bond like hero, and now he gets to take this really dark villain turn. I know that that's what drew him to the role, and he kind of wanted to embrace it, you know, with full conviction, and that's really where um, some of the jerky stuff and the cave and the teeth. That's where that stuff started to really come to life. Was once he that um, brought his perspective to the role. He really was informing the character with what he wanted to bring, and the energy between Taron and Charlize was something that you could only write to once you had them cast, and that was just part of the sort of production process was figuring out the right balance between them.
Were there specifics that Taron suggested when you were writing it and when he was reading the script?
Oh yeah, the song. It was 100% his choice. He found that song. He wanted that song. In my version, it was he read like a poem,
Mm.
and that's not nearly as awesome as what Taron found that Chemical Brothers song. It was part of the prep. It was played on set, and now it's in the movie, just as he kind of envisioned it from the very first read. So yeah, that's the moment that kind of comes to mind first. But the other parts about like this sort of mother
Yeah.
issues and things like that were things that he wanted to bring to the character.
Mm.
A lot of that kind of backstory, the shading, the motivation, um, was stuff that came from him.
Yeah, when you were mentioning the mother and child sort of behavior that he was having, it doesn't feel like Ben actually wants to hurt Sasha sometimes. He restrains himself, especially when he's strangling her, and it's almost acting like a child seeking approval. Was he actually looking for a victim to eat, or was he just a lonely kid in a monster's body looking for someone to play with?
I mean, that's the best question. I think that was the question. I think it's both of those things. I think he's wrestling with both of those things, and that there are certain impulses he can't control. He's still trying to figure it out. I mean, you know, there was always a sense that you were writing to the dynamic that exists between Charlize and Taron. That was something that in the early in the early drafts of the script, I think I had them as this more or less the same age. But then playing into some of those disparities brought that new dynamic that just wasn't there. And so to your point, like that's what he's struggling with. He doesn't he doesn't know. And that moment was one of the hardest to write in the script was when he pulls himself back from the edge from choking her, where he realizes like I don't want to do it. That was the hardest scene for me to figure out what's stopping him from killing her here. And I think that has to do with a certain kind of ritual, but also a fear of dying. He does not want to die here alone. That was a certain moment in the story where they have to work together that I found so exciting, is that the story, I hope, takes a slightly different turn than you were expecting. It's not just the cat and mouse hunt that you might think that it is. It ends up kind of developing into something um, hopefully more surprising. Not to like give any spoilers, but I hope that is a thing that you don't see coming. And so that suddenly, while they're chained together and forced to be these kind of climbing partners, you're like, oh my God, he's not the same kind of killer that I maybe thought he was
Mm.
in the opening.
Yeah, like that tandem climb. It's almost like a motherly climb, carrying him up like a baby. Uh,
100%.
and she's acting as his mother essentially, so Ben can survive, and it's got this bonding element, but it also feels deeply comfortable because in your mind you're thinking, is she looking for a connection with Ben, or is it just a cold tactic to use his mom issues to win and become the ultimate predator?
Yeah, no, Mohammed, you have nailed it probably better than I could have said it. I think that one of the things that was so informed by Charlize and Theron is that you know you always kind of knew that the mountain was this like physical thing that she was going to have to climb, and she was going to have to find cracks and holds and fissures and handholds, and how is she going to scale the mountain. She also has to figure out how to do that with Ben. Where are the cracks in his facade? Because he seems so capable and so with it, and he knows this area, and he's got supplies, and he has the whole game planned. And then suddenly he's out of his comfort zone, and he's injured, and he doesn't know where he is. And that gives her this ability to take charge and to use things that she's learned about him against him to kind of get what she wants. And I think that um, that was something that just kind of became part of the story once Charlize and Taron were involved and figuring out what that psychological cat and mouse game was going to look like beyond just the kind of physical movements of the story. What are we going to do in that kind of mental game to kind of play off of each other? I feel so lucky that was an element that wasn't there that they brought out.
Yeah, it was amazing. And the main one that I wanted to touch on was the liver logic. Like Ben has this ritual about eating liver to take the strength off of his victims. Um, and as a writer, where did that specific law actually come from? Is Ben like following a code that he made up, or is it something that's like a twisted outback legend?
That's such a good question. There were there was a lot of things he's cobbling together. I don't think. I mean, for me, I wasn't drawing on one specific um idea. I was drawn to I can tell you the inspiration for me was the idea of a sort of um like it's called like everything but the squeal. You use
Mm.
everything of the animal, but like its howl. So if you're a certain kind of there's a certain purity in being a hunter of the land where you are respecting your kill by using every single element from organs to hide to hooves to every part of the animal. And I think that that's really where it kind of came from was almost this twisted respect
Mm.
for your prey where you are going to um, give it value and essentially kind of take its life force into you as this ultimate sign of respect, which, of course, if you're the victim, is incredibly twisted. But if you're Ben, you don't see yourself as the villain. You see yourself as the hero of your own story. To him, it's the ultimate sign of respect for his opponent. And I think I know that's the best that's where I was kind of coming from with that idea and how it sort of developed from there was ultimately inspired by kind of that that respect
Yeah,
for the animal.
yeah, because you can tell that he clearly has some care for his victims, the way that he
100%.
tenderizes them, and even though it's such a gruesome killing, he's so meticulous with it, as we see with serial killers. But I wanted to talk about the ending, the final ending. Sasha, she didn't get to the summit at the start, but she got there at the end, and she's barefoot, she's laughing, and after 95 minutes of hell, is that a laugh of victory, or is it someone that's finally lost their mind just for the thrill of the kill?
What do you think? I can tell you what I think, but I'm curious what your read is because I think that's you answer first and then I'll answer.
Okay, okay. I'm thinking it's satisfaction, but it made me think whether she enjoyed killing her partner at the start, whether it's almost like she has to do anything necessary to become the apex predator.
Look, I what I love about that ending is that you can read it that way. You can read it anyway. I would never in a million years want to tell any audience how to experience the ending of that movie. I think one of the best my favorite moment is that moment at the top of the mountain where Charlize just delivers that kind of catharsis. But it but you can read it a whole number of ways and I think that there's so much wrapped up in that release of energy and release of emotion. I think there's triumph and tragedy wrapped up together. And I love that you kind of don't know if she's going to be okay. I mean, she has survived this thing, but who can say what's next for her? I mean, I have ideas of what I think can happen. I think that there's lighter paths and darker paths that she can still take, and it's going to be up to her to kind of one foot in front of the other, depending on where she wants to go next. But no,
Yeah.
your read is as valid as any. I love the idea that there's maybe just a like a little twinge of darkness in that something is turned on in her. I think for me, I loved the idea of what does it mean to summit that mountain. There's so much wrapped up in being able to accomplish this task, given where she starts and um, what she's really haunted by and plagued by. And there is this sense that she was finally able to do this thing that she couldn't do in that opening. And it is the thing that kind of is responsible for her partner's death, but it's also the thing that's responsible for her ability to survive. And I think that's kind of what she's realizing in that moment is just, I'm alive and I'm here and the sun is shining and I can feel my feet and like I'm on this earth. What does she do from there? I mean, there's lots of possible paths that she goes, but I think to your point, like, there, I don't know. There's dark ones and there's light ones. Like with anybody, it's going to be a daily decision. I'm going to do this and not that. And I think that she kind of has to see that darkness in herself. She's got to see that darkness in Ben. She's got to confront the very thing that she thought she wanted and realizes that she doesn't in order to hopefully forge a new path.
Yeah, she sees red flags as like finish lines. And I think that's the dangerous thing with her character. She doesn't essentially learn that she's almost found a new thrill and a new high that she has to overcome to find the next high. But I wanted to ask, working with Charlize and Taron, how was it? How was the experience?
So in like full transparency, there was a writer who was doing some of the dialogue production work with them on set. My job was largely done by the time they came aboard and we did a kind of draft together. And then, so my experience largely was limited. That's the truth. I think that there was more that happened with Balt and the other writer on set where they were doing some of the shading. Um,
Did you
so
guys
I
get to
can't.
film back with each other?
Not with them. I mean, I saw it separately.
Okay.
But I'm going next week. Next week I'm going for the premiere in New York.
Oh,
So
nice.
we'll see. We'll see it all together, and I'll be able to tell them in person just how grateful I am that they just fucking crushed it.
Which scenes do you think they're going to be most terrified by?
Do you mean the audience or the actors?
The actors.
Ooh.
I'll be honest, when Ben was falling, that I think that was the saddest scene. You saw the
At the end.
childlike nature in his
Yeah,
eyes.
yeah, yeah. So they really dropped Taron. That's like they did that. That was wild to see. There's certain
No way,
what
he did his own
one of the
stunts.
what
He did his own stunt.
both of them did a ton of stunts. I mean, Charlize was climbing that mountain barefoot for real. They were doing a ton of all that water. I mean, a lot of that water stuff, both practically and then like in a sort of whitewater practice facility outside Sydney. They were doing that stuff. They were pushing themselves to that place so that there's just no faking it in the movie. Like you really feel like they're doing that stuff in large part because they actually are. And that was one of those things that just man, you just like don't think that that's going to be how they're going to make the movie. But then Balt and Larry and the whole kind of production team push themselves to these crazy locations. I mean, they were flying like gear with helicopters into gorges, swimming through like canyons in order to film in these crazy places. So the things that I think will scare them the most, I think some of the climbing stuff feels really real because they were really doing that. To me, for me, the scariest stuff is in the cave. That was always the sequence that I found the most terrifying. Is kind of the revelation of what Ben is about and what he's doing. Um, I don't know what for you was Ben's death that was maybe the most chilling.
That mainly because it's sort of like they had the bond, but I was just unsure whether he was going to like throw her off, but it seemed like he genuinely wanted to build a rapport. become friends, and he was overcoming the mom issues, the friend issues. He was lonely, and he was like, "Oh, we were meant to do it together. We were meant to do this." Yeah, but
Where you,
it,
you were kind of rooting for it to become a buddy comedy.
sort of, yeah. But then obviously, then the title wouldn't make sense. You have to be the ultimate apex predator.
No, she has to kind of that she has to figure out how to use what she's learned and kind of use it against him in order to find the moment that she can flip the tables and take control. And instead of him dragging her by that cable through the mountains, she's now dragging him by that cable and figuring out the moments where the tables start to turn. That was always part of the fun of figuring out the second half of the movie was finding those modulations so that you could feel what you're feeling of like, oh, this is becoming something unexpected. I didn't see the story maybe taking this turn, and that was always something that was exciting to me about that story was figuring out where do we surprise the audience by what's going to happen next. Oh, maybe we're going to root for. Oh my God, I didn't. They're gonna work together. Oh, maybe they're gonna do this. Oh no, she's gonna. Like finding those moments of keeping the audience on its toes was just part of the challenge up until the final edit was figuring out those movements.
When you wrote that first draft or the final draft, and you put all these twisted elements, the survival elements, just all this grit, rough, just survival stuff. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna cast Charlize and Taron." We're like, "Oh crap, they've got to be put through the blender on this one."
I mean, there was no part of me that was like, oh crap. I was like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. That was my very first reaction. No, my reaction to finishing the script was knowing how difficult it was going to be to find actors who could do this.
Mm.
I never thought about who was going to do it. I just knew it was a very, very, very short list because of how physically demanding it was, and that you wanted someone who was going to push themselves physically the way that Charlize and Taron wanted to do. I mean, they said yes because they wanted that physical challenge. So to me, when I look at what I wrote, I actually can't believe that they did the crazy things that I wrote. Like, that's insane. I just was writing it as a story on the page. I didn't really think anyone was going to actually have to figure out how to do it, let alone two actors who were going to be game enough to do it themselves. I think that was really just one of those magical, humbling, grateful things that you're just like, wow, you're going to actually do this? Like, I can't even do this. I just wrote it. I just was imagining it. And then you've got them figuring out, nah, here's how we're going to do it for real. Here's how we're going to climb together. And I think that was, it's kind of what just like makes that movie kind of gritty and tactile is that you really feel that they're doing it because they are. There's just like no fake in that. And I think that's, I hope, what gives the movie that kind of,
Bite.
that kind of, yeah, it gives it that real bite, that real punch where you kind of are like, hopefully glued to your seat. You don't want to stop watching it. You're not going to pause it to go like run to the bathroom. You're just like, no, I'm in this world. It's really immersive. The experience of it is so intense. And that's because of how they made it, how they shot it, how they put themselves in those locations for real. It gives it that quality that you just like can't fake. It's not done in a computer. They're doing it rigging and climbing and cables and all of those stunts are so unbelievable that my reaction when I watched that movie is like, I don't understand how you fucking did it. I can't believe you did it. All the crazy stuff I wrote has come to life in this way that is beyond anything that I could have ever imagined.
And can we talk about the accent for a second? The Australian accent from
Please,
Taron.
please.
Because Sasha, she guessed that he was British. Do you feel like the Australian accent was that like a facade almost, or was it something that he adopted to take on this persona?
I think there's a couple different interpretations and any of them are valid. I can tell you from my side, once we knew we were going to be shooting in Australia and rewriting the story for Australia, So I had originally written it in the places that I have camped and hiked, which is the Southwest of the United States, Pacific Northwest, kind of California, Yosemite, Zion, all of the national parks here in the States. Once we were transposing it to Australia, Balt and his team then found those locations and built an imaginary national park that's pulled from locations all across Australia and New Zealand to basically make up a new national park to just in the craziest places you could find. And once we knew that that was the location and that we were casting Taron, who's Welsh, you wanted to feel like you were writing a believable backstory and playing to everyone's strength. And so it's part of his act. I think he's trying to put it on for size. He's trying to blend in. He is this kind of chameleon character. And I think that there was always a sense that the accent was meant to deceive, but she's really, really, really observant and she is keyed in. And that's almost in a way for Ben attractive. That's what makes her such a worthy opponent, such a worthy foe, is that she kind of sees through some of the facade. And so it was about finding a believable backstory. And Taron really wanted to do the accent. He didn't want to like, if he's speaking as a Brit or with what it would have changed the character in a way. And so I think we were trying to lean into something that felt believable that might have a moment of revelation or surprise later in the movie. And that's really kind of where the accent came from and kind of how it was hopefully utilized in the second half of the story.
Because first I was thinking, damn, he's an Australian, he's nailed the accent. But then the scene where he's falling, that's when the accent sort of slips out, and then I'm thinking the facade's gone, it's all been revealed, and he can't put on a face anymore because he's essentially going to plummet to his death.
I think there's, when you are in certain situations where you're not in control, the things that you have built to kind of keep up a facade or play a part, play a character, pretend to be someone that you're not, those things get stripped away. And so the same thing happens to Sasha that happens to Ben, which is you kind of lose some of those disguises. Like nature has a way of really humbling you if you are not careful. And I think that's what was you picked up on something I really love about the story, which is Ben's true nature can't help but show through. That's also why he doesn't want to die. He's not someone who's prepared to die. He really doesn't want to. And I think that that's what almost it sort of humanizes him in a way, because he's not just this cold-blooded killer. There is this wounded child underneath who came from England, there is a whole other layer to Ben that you're really picking up as part of what Taron kind of brought to the role, and that kind of Balt really carefully plotted out where were you going to see shadings of this person underneath the killer that he obviously appears to be, and obviously still is, but that there is a layer to the character that might surprise you.
Yeah, when he said the childlike nature that he brings, there's a line that he repeats. Do you think I've got a problem? It's like that seeking of approval, because Sasha says it at the start, oh, you've got a problem, as a joke. But then when he's in the cave and he's got her pinned up on the wall, he says, do you think I've got a problem? When they're talking about the mom stuff, it's almost like he's trying to seek that approval again, and essentially it brings the child out of him.
I mean, you nailed it 100%. I think that was always the hope and intention, was to find a character in Ben who was wrestling with that himself. He's not like fully formed. He's not, his MO as a killer is still like kind of in the works. He's not sure if he does or not. Like, and there's almost a part of him that thinks that this is the answer to solving his problems in this kind of twisted backward way, where he is looking for understanding and approval, and kind of sees Sasha as a kindred spirit and this maternal figure, and he's lost. I mean, for someone who seems so in control and so like well planned, he has no idea what's going on inside. He's like still actually in process of figuring it out. And I think that's like one of the things that wasn't in the story in the script as Ben. That it was different. I love this version so much more because it gives Ben so much more to play and so much more instability and kind of like he has no idea what he's doing. He's really trying to find his way through the proverbial metaphorical mountains also. So yeah, man, you watch the movie so closely. Like I love it. I'm so glad. It really means a lot.
Would you say that killing Ben makes her a hero, or does it make her just the same as what he was or what he wanted to be?
I my hope, I can only speak as like one audience member. Everyone will have a different read. I don't see killing Ben as making Sasha equivalent to Ben because for her, she's trying to survive. She knows this man is capable of great horror. And even if she survives, he's done uh, unforgivable things to countless other people. And so I think that for her, it's almost, I hope, um, a justified killing in some sense. In order to get out and get help and kind of bring closure to all these other people whose family members have gone missing. I think that does it make her a hero?
Mhm.
I don't know. Like I'm not even
Ambiguous.
sure that it. I'm not sure that it I'm not sure that it matters, but I think that you want to feel like she's triumphed in a much more emotional way and not just like kind of, oh, you killed the bad guy. It's like, yes, but what did it mean? What did it allow you to do? How will you live your life now? And I think that part of it is part of what I love about the ending is that she brings these people home even though they're not alive. She's returning these loved ones to their families, and that kind of closure for that many people I think is much more of a heroic act than actually killing Ben. That's how I always saw that kind of resolution.
Yeah, I think I conflicted myself before because I said that I thought she wanted to become the predator, but yeah, she did end up humanizing herself, and that's not something obviously someone like Ben would do. Go and tell the truth, help gather everyone. But I lied.
Totally.
My favorite scene actually wasn't the falling scene. I just remembered it was a scene where Taron he comes out of the lake after he's swimming and acting like a kid, and Charlie's Sasha's leg is trapped. Uh, and then what he does is this is where we see the reptile, the animal come out, and he's growling, he's grunting, he's making all these noises that we saw earlier in the film. And when writing something like that, what details do you put in for the actors, or do you just put, oh, becomes an animal and then let them do the work?
That it's such a good question. That is all Taryn. The squawking, the kind of animal sounds. When I saw that on the dailies, I was like, this is fucking awesome. Because it wasn't in the script. He kind of found that, that feral, monstrous, beastly, wild animal quality. And the squawking and the grunting. I sort of had the action, right? Like he's running down, he's grabbing the chain, he's strong, he's pulling her. Like I wrote out the sort of beats of what happens, the bear spray in the face, kind of the fight scene, but then what Ben is as a character and how he's kind of doing it, that's all Taryn of just kind of bringing that beastly beastly animal feral monster quality to it where you're like, I don't even know how I would write that. I don't even know what I would do. But he just kind of that was all performance.
Mm. And I have to wrap up, but I wanted to ask, with when he ends up starting this game, he gives her the pepper spray, he doesn't give her the phone, he gives her the food. Why does he give her all these items to make it a level playing field? Is it like he wants to play a game? Is he lonely, or does he just want a challenge to essentially get his best kill?
I think it's maybe the version of the kind of the last thing you said. To him, the fun of the game is if it goes as long as possible, right? Like it's why he doesn't shoot her there. He doesn't want to kill her unless they've had their fun. To him, the hunt is the whole. It's the very first part of the game is the hunt, and then there's all of the stuff in the cave. That's also sort of the ritualistic aspect of this experience for him. But I think that he wants to make it clear I'm very much in control, and I want this to be as even as possible while still knowing I'm absolutely in charge. So I'm not going to give you a weapon. I'm not going to give you a phone, but here's some rations. Here's some water. I don't want this to just wrap up in 20 minutes. I want this to like, if this goes for days and days and days, the longer it goes, the more fun he has. He doesn't in a million years think that he's going to lose. And so for him, he's probably learned over time, no, in order to make this enjoyable, I got to give them some head start. I got to give them some chance. Otherwise, it's going to be over in a matter of minutes. And I think for him, the fun of it is like, now let me draw this out. Let me give you a chance, or at least let me give you a, let me let you, let me let you think you have a chance. That's what I would say. He wants people to think that there's a chance that they can do this. And he knows full well as soon as you took that turn down the river, it's just a gauntlet and I've got you trapped. And the further you go, the more I get to enjoy, hunting and pursuing.
100%. And it was lovely speaking with you, Jeremy. I could speak all
Oh,
day.
Mohammed, thank you so much,
I
man.
love the film.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I'm a filmmaker myself, and it's exactly the type of film I want to make. So
Ah, dude,
that's what
amazing.
I
Well,
was,
just write,
yeah. I just
no,
got
just
right.
yeah, write the thing you love. That's like that's where this movie started. And dude, I hope that like, in a year I'm interviewing you about the movie that you wrote. Like I couldn't wait to see it, man.
No worries. And yeah, congrats on the release and
Thanks so
good
much,
luck
man.
on the premiere.
Appreciate you taking the time watching the movie and chatting. It was a pleasure.
No worries.